Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's April 11th. This is our biweekly council briefing. We have three primary items to go over with you tonight. The first one we have is a legislative wrap-up report from Public Affairs Consultants. They are our lobbyists in Tallahassee to help us prevent bad legislation from getting passed and helping good legislation move forward. We do have Jack Corey and Erin Ballas on the line from their firm. And I think we're turning it over to either Jack or Erin, if you wanted to do an introduction and then start your presentation.
Perfect. Well, I'll start. My name is Erin Ballas. I am Vice President of Public Affairs Consultants. Also on the line is Jack Corey. He's the founding member of our firm. And then I think Kina is on as well. She's the president of our company. And we are so thankful to represent the city of Jacksonville Beach. We've been doing it for quite a while now, but I wanted to start before I started the presentation by thanking Mike and the mayor and the council members who came over and joined us in Tallahassee this year. We had some really productive meetings. I'm going to go over one specifically during the slides, but it is so great to have you guys come over and actually interact with the members while they're here. We know that we ask you often to meet with them when they're in the district, but coming over to Tallahassee and spending that time with us while we go and visit with them is also really rewarding. So I just wanted to give that shout out. I know a couple of you have come over in years before and then COVID happened. But as always, we wanted to thank you for joining us. So I'm gonna share my screen. Let's make sure I can do this. Here, I'm gonna start it from here. Can everyone see my slides? Good. Yep. So we're just going to start with a wrap up of session for anyone who wasn't involved. So the 2022 session began on January 11th. It is an early session. In even years, we have an early 60-day session. A few years ago, when we did redistricting, a lot of members expressed the desire to have an early session in order to, they said so they could have spring breaks, but also if you'll notice, this is an election year and they can't raise funds while they are in session. So that's one of the reasons. They should have ended on March 11th. They actually ended on March 14th at 1:03 p.m. So they went past the deadline. They have a constitutional requirement to do two things, and they didn't get one of those things done in time, and we'll go over that later on. So they should have completed their work on the 11th. They have to pass a balanced budget, and then this year they had to also pass a redistricting plan. And the reason they went over is because they didn't complete the budget, and we'll go over that a little bit later, but they did complete their redistricting plan. So here's some just general overviews. 212 bills passed. That's 87 that originated in the House, 125 that originated in the Senate. This is an increase in the amount of bills that we have had in years past, but it's trending kind of, it's fluctuating, but staying pretty similar. The total amount of bills that were actually passed this year, that were actually filed, is much, much higher, and we'll go over that as well. So on top of that, how did they do this legislative session? And the best way to say that is that they passed a budget over $100 billion. They had more money than any legislature has ever had, ever in the history of the state of Florida, and they couldn't come to an agreement on how to spend those funds. Offhandedly, the appropriations chairwoman in the Senate made a comment that said, when you have more money, you have a lot more problems. It's a lot harder to figure out how to spend it. And then the other requirement that they had to do is they had to pass maps. They did that. They passed a House and a Senate map that were approved by the Supreme Court, and they found that out in the middle of their work. And then the congressional maps were just vetoed by the governor. And next week, we're going to go into a special session specifically to work on those maps. So the big three, what were their priorities? So the president the governor and the speaker, how did they do overall in their priorities? So the president went into this. He wanted to continue to really heavily invest in ports and roadways and in water storage, especially north of the Everglades. He wanted to increase state workers and law enforcement wages. He wanted to lessen the issues that come with early childhood care and specifically deal with some adoption kind of issues that are holding individuals back from adopting. President Simpson was adopted himself, and this is a really important issue to him. And then discouraging burdensome local government regulations. So that's you guys, and we'll talk about that later. So the governor, he wanted a $15 billion pot in reserves that he could access. He wanted a $1 billion tax holiday. He wanted to replace the Florida assessment for students that are in K through 12 education. He wanted teacher and law enforcement bonuses specifically to try and keep good teachers and to recruit new law enforcement officers to our state. He wanted to continue to invest in our natural resources. He wanted some border protection language and then data privacy. And then Speaker Sprowls, he played it closest to the vest through this whole thing. He wanted to work on affordable housing. He wanted to work on law enforcement recruitment. He specifically wanted to pass a pretty sweeping abortion bill, critical race theory issues he wanted to take care of, and then data privacy. So how'd the Senate president do? He actually did great. No one should be surprised by that. He got a significant amount of money in the budget for infrastructure investments. He did increase workers' pay, a 5% raise across the board. That allowed every individual who's a state worker to have an increase to their wages. So everyone could rise up to the minimum wage requirement that was passed in that constitutional amendment. He passed a large foster care bill that has a significant impact on individuals who foster children. There was some issues with families who are fostering it in-house. So if a grandmother is fostering her child, they didn't get the same kind of financial help that other individuals who were fostering kids did. That is now corrected in the foster care bill. And then he wanted to pass the burdensome local government relations. And we're going to talk about SB 620 later on. So Speaker Sprowls, he got, and I want everyone to recognize how low these bill numbers are. That's normally a good sign that these are high priorities of the speaker. So he passed HB 1, the additional homestead property tax exemption for specific critical public service workforce that was passed. So that allows individuals who are in law enforcement, who are teachers, to have certain property exemptions when they purchase homes. HB3 is the law enforcement officer benefits recruitment and training. This is everything from making sure that they can get higher pay, they get bonuses when they come here, their kids can go to private schools for free. All of that was signed and passed by the governor. HB 5, which is reducing fetal and infant mortality, was passed and signed by the governor. That's the abortion bill. HB 7 is the individual freedoms bill. That was passed as well. This makes it so that this is the woke bill that I'm sure you've read about or heard about. And then HB 9 is the consumer data privacy bill. It passed the House. This is a very big bill that has to do with how different entities that get your information, such as a bank, or as let's say if you do pickup orders from Publix and it keeps your information, it is supposed to make it so that they can't then sell that data and make money off of it without your knowledge, and you should be allowed to pass off. It's a very similar bill to a California bill and then a Virginia bill that's out there as well. And then Governor DeSantis, he did relatively well as most could have guessed, he got only $9 billion in his reserve fund. His gas tax, he is going to get one. It will be in October. The testing bill, SB 1048, was passed and signed already. So that will change how we test our students. They'll be tested periodically throughout the year instead of one big end of the year bill. Additionally, these tests will all take place on computers, which did not happen before. It used to be pen and paper. Teachers and law enforcement did get raises. There was a lot of funding for natural resources. A border protection bill was passed by Senator Bean. This is the bill that came out of some reports that we are no longer, as the state of Florida, going to do business with entities that illegally bring illegal aliens into our state in the dead of night by airplane. That bill passed as well. And then data privacy didn't end up passing. So his only real loss of the session. So what were the big issues, in case you weren't sitting in every committee meeting like we were? Abortion was a huge issue. It sucked a lot of the what did we say? It used a lot of the bandwidth individuals had in this session. We were listening to a wrap up of another person, and basically 7 bills took up the most time and the most bandwidth out of all the bills that were passed this session. And they were really the only bills that those 7 bills were the main divisive bills between the two entities. So it actually showed that in Tallahassee, a lot more things are done where people agree than necessarily these bigger bills where they don't. So the budget passed. Education was a huge component as well. Elections law was moving through as well. There was a little bit of healthcare and COVID. A lot more of it had to deal with, the first bill passed out was a COVID related bill, extending the exemption from healthcare providers from possibly having suit brought against them during the pandemic. Immigration, insurance was a huge issue, although not a lot of bills made it all the way through. There is some desire by some members to come back and handle that. And I think there is a desire by most Floridians. You either know someone or you are that person who has had your coverage removed or increased, and it's getting out of control. So, but how are we going to handle that? And I don't know that anyone has an answer yet. Local government issues, as always, were a huge issue this year. Redistricting, and then what ended up becoming a big issue that wasn't on anyone's radar at the beginning was solar power, and was specifically about net metering and how that should take place in our state. So this is just for information. This is a tally of how many bills, who were the top bill sponsors who passed things. This is often a good indicator of who will be moving up in the ranks in the years to come. So Danny Burgess passed the most bills, followed by Joe Gruder. Jennifer Bradley, who is from your area, not your senator, she passed a good amount as well, followed by Keith Perry and Ana Maria Rodriguez. This can look a little skewed because remember, senators can file as many bills as they would like, whereas House sponsors are limited to 7. Now, they used to only be allowed to have 6, but now they can have 7. In the House, Lawrence McClure, he passed the most bills. He is rising up through leadership very quickly. Pat Maney passed the second most, and he passed 6, followed by Linda Cheney, Chuck Clemens, and Lauren Mello. So just a little bit of information to kind of see where everybody falls is kind of interesting. So redistricting, it only happens once in a decade. We have to pass a new congressional map, a new House map, and a new Senate map. The House Senate map, the House and Senate maps were agreed on. They were sent to the court. The court said, great job. You followed all of the rules that are out there for you. So everything in the Constitution, you did it right. Good job. Check. Done. The congressional maps were delayed. Governor DeSantis had asked for the Supreme Court to intervene. They denied the governor's request originally during session. Then Governor DeSantis tried to have the legislature consider his version of the congressional map. And the House came out where they included, for the first time ever, 2 maps. And they said, here you go. Here's your map that you like, Governor. Here's the map we drew. Here are the 2 congressional maps. We're sending them to you in one package. So here you go. And as soon as they voted on it, the governor came out and was being interviewed and said that that was dead on arrival. He was going to veto the maps and they were going to come back. In light of that, a special session has been called. It'll start the 19th and run through the 22nd. And then today we kind of got to see the plan of how they're going to move forward. And the plan right now, as laid out by the House and the Senate, is we in the House and the Senate want you to bring us the map you like, Governor, and you explain to us how that map is better, and then we'll move forward. But we're not going to draft any more maps to send to you, and then you veto them and send them back. We want to do something collectively, come to us and tell us what it should look like. And so that is essentially where we are right now. Nobody in the House or the Senate staff is drawing a map. So, I mean, who knows what that means for all of us moving forward. So as more things come to light, we will share them with Mike and he can share them with you. But a lot of us are interested to see how it goes. So the budget. This year's budget was the largest in history. It's a $112.1 billion budget. Now that total amount does include the federal COVID-19 relief fund. So that is included in this budget, giving it a much larger pot of money to spend. This included the across-the-board pay raises for all state employees. It included an increase in funding for all public schools. It included an increase for water projects in Florida Forever, and it included an increase in funding for nursing homes. Now, one thing I do want to point out for the public school portion that did have a lot of press behind it was that what was originally included in the House budget specifically was a withholding of funds for all of the school districts that mandated masks going into the school year. It wasn't intended to show them that if you're going to break the law, because there was a special session that said you could not mandate school masks, then you're going to lose some state funds. That obviously is not a great way to, the Senate didn't like it. And so what they did instead is they gave an increase of funds. There's an increased funding pot that all school districts that did not require masks can apply to get certain grants and can get funds. Now, even with that amount, if you take that grant funding away, all public school districts did get an increase from the amount they were given last year across the board. So so I can say this, in Leon County, there was a mask mandate. They are still going to receive more funds this year from their base funding than they did the year before, but they can't access the additional funds that are allotted in a grant. So everybody, all boats rose, but some boats are going to get to rise even higher. So the Florida's balanced budget, here are some other high points. It is a record $8.9 billion in budget reserves. There's funding to address inflation. This fund is, I can't remember the name, but the acronym spells Biden. That amount of money is put there with the intention that if you have to buy gas, let's say, and you are Department of Transportation and you've run out of your money, you can go to the Biden fund and you can access more funds because of the inflation. It included an improvement of $170 million in cybersecurity. These funds are allocated into different pots, but there is a significant amount of money that can be accessed by local governments in order to shore up your systems and make sure that you don't have situations where you might have been hacked and now you're having to negotiate. They want you to shore up your systems, your cybersecurity, so that issue doesn't arise. There's $125 million in nursing recruitment to address the staffing shortages. The FTE, which is the per student funding, is the highest it's ever been. And then affordable housing programs, this is the first year that they haven't swept the Affordable Housing Fund, the Sadowski Fund, in order to fund other portions of the budget. So all of that stayed intact. Also included are tax holidays. So there's a 14-day back to school tax holiday. This is, we have gone back to the original where we used to have 2 weeks. There is a 14-day disaster preparedness tax holiday. That's the longest they've had for that disaster tax holiday. We have a 7-day Freedom Week tax holiday that normally occurs around the 4th of July. You can use that on things such as like joining a gym, buying tickets to a concert, outdoor events, those type of things. It's intended to get you outside in the state of Florida and enjoying your summer activities. We have a new tax holiday. It's 7 days, and it's called the Tool Time tax holiday. This is intended for individuals who work in industries that require tools. So your tools would be protective wear, glasses, coveralls, boots, those type of things are all tax exempt as well. We have some other tax exemptions. There's a 2-year impact resistant for doors, windows, and garage doors. So if you are looking to upgrade your windows or your garage doors, now's the time to do it. There is a 1-year baby and toddler clothes and shoes tax holiday. So anything from size newborn to 5T is tax-free for the entire year. There is a 1-year diaper tax holiday. So diapers for only children. So only from newborn to, I think, the overnights that are directed for kids are tax-free for the entire year. A 1-year Energy Star appliance tax holiday, and then a 3-month children's books tax holiday. This was really important to the speaker, who really has a focus on making sure that there's not that slide. Last year, he passed, the House and Senate passed a bill that they did a program that brings books to kids who don't have any. And this one allows for students in the summer months to purchase books and not have to pay the tax on them to try and keep them reading. There's also a reduction in the mobile home tax. It's from 6% to 3%. So how did Jacksonville Beach's priorities do? We did pretty well. The first bill is the only bad bill that did pass, and it is waiting to be sent to the governor. So this is this SB 620, local governments by Hudson, and then the matching bill is by Representative McClure. This is the one that really does make life very difficult for local governments, where if you pass a local ordinance that has a business that has been in operation for 3 years and they see a 15% loss in profits, they can then bring a suit against the city, and you can either remove the ordinance or go to court. And this is a bill that was the heaviest lobbied bill. It had more individual lobbyists signed up to lobby either for or against this bill than any other bill that moved through the session this year. Unfortunately, it did pass, and it is waiting to be sent to the governor. And Mike, I know that you have reached out and asked that the bill be vetoed. We are still working with the governor's office to try and get him to veto this bill. It will have a huge fiscal effect on your residents, because what will happen is everything will become more expensive because now you're going into litigation on things. The thought process behind it was, if we pass this bill, there will be no more bills that have to come up here and circumvent local governments. We don't have to do any more of that. And I'm not sure it's going to achieve that. Instead, what you're going to achieve is making this cottage industry of attorneys who are going to go after local governments and are going to read each one of these ordinances and make things more difficult. So still working on this bill, hoping that we can get the governor to veto it. This is the only bad bill that was on your track list that did end up passing. So that's good. It's just a really bad bill. SB 280 and HB 403 was the other local ordinance bill that was moving through. This one was just about, basically came down to it that you had to do a financial review before a local ordinance could be passed. I think when it came down to it, most cities, and including you guys, went neutral on this bill, that the bill became acceptable. This bill died in messages, so it did not make it out. It's not going to make it to the governor's desk. I wouldn't be surprised to see this bill coming back in the next year, but again, didn't make it this year across the finish line. Okay, so vacation rentals. This bill, we did meet with Rep. Fisher on this bill, and I just want to say everybody was ready. We are going to talk to him about why this was a huge impact, why we couldn't do this for Jacksonville Beach, all these things. And we sat down with him and he was like, meh, don't really care. And we couldn't, I couldn't believe it. After all the things we'd heard from other members who had met with him, from other lobbyists, they're like, nope, you're never going to move, and blah, blah. He was like, I think we do something about the platforms and we move on. So I was very thankful everybody came. I'm glad we had the meeting with him because he basically told us that nobody had met with him. And so if we hadn't been in there, who knows where he would have gone. But this died in committee. The Senate version did move most of the way through, but the House version didn't. There was just no taste for it this year. I do anticipate that vacation rentals will continue to come back year after year. So just be ready. We'll probably have another bill, I would think, in next year, because the vacation rental industry does want to have it do something to make it standardized across the state. HB 284 and SB 460. This is the homestead assessments following a change of ownership. This bill, it died in committee. We were watching this bill just to kind of see if it was going to pass. We weren't openly opposing it, but we weren't a huge proponent of the bill either, but it died in committee as well. This bill we watched as well. It kind of was a sleeper bill. SB 1158 and HB 707 are about home kitchen operations. So this is a new kind of niche market where that came out of the pandemic, where an entity will work out of their house and basically make home cooked meals that you can pick up on your way home. So they don't make hundreds of meals, but they can make a good amount. So let's say 20 to 30, and you would be on your way home and say, I would love a home cooked meal, but I don't want to cook it. I'm just going to swing by Erin's house. I know that today is pot roast day, and I'll just pay her $30 and I'll pick up the pot roast and I'll go home and I'll have my food already made. Sounds great. But this bill would have significantly changed how you regulate those home businesses as well. And so this bill ended up dying in committee as well. It was heard in two committees, one in the House and one in the Senate, which prepares a bill that you can amend it onto something. We watched a couple of other bills move through, and an amendment did go on one bill that has to do with local governments not being able to basically, that guy who cooks hot dogs outside of Lowe's, so that a local government couldn't say he can't cook that hot dog outside of Lowe's. There was apparently somebody who regulated that. So we put that amendment did go in, but I don't believe the bill it was in passed all the way through. So I think home kitchens will come back. So we'll keep an eye on it for you. But again, only got heard in one committee this year, and is very focused in the South Florida area as an area that's being impacted right now. SB 886 and HB 515. This is the municipal water and sewer utility rates bill. This bill made it so that you couldn't charge someone outside of the receiving utilities area a higher fee, even though they don't have to pay for all of the infrastructure and everything else that go to it if you provide them the services. This bill was not heard in committee, but again, it's impacting a very specific area in South Florida. I imagine it'll come back, but we'll keep an eye on it as well. But again, this year wasn't heard in committee. And then this is the automated license plate readers bill that we put in. You have to put in a bill to be considered for the budget. We put it in again this year because it's important to continue talking about this, even though it was vetoed the year before. We are still working with the governor's office to try and figure out why he doesn't like automated readers. We were told that he believes it's still kind of an invasion of privacy, kind of waivers on it. So we're going to continue working on it. We've been working with him specifically to try and explain to him that, all you see is the license plate. It's not stored anywhere. It hits a database. This would be huge for law enforcement. You love law enforcement. Let's try and do it so we can catch some more criminals who are entering our state, who are not necessarily our criminals. let's try and do our due diligence to do that. So we're continuing to work on that. It was heard in committee, so it was ready for session, but no license plate readers were added to the budget this year because of the veto issue that happened the year before. So what's next up here in Tallahassee? Well, special session, MAPS Part 2. So like I told you, we're going to be working on hearing what they do for the congressional maps, what the governor desires. And when those maps are ultimately chosen, the huge impact will kind of come in the next round of elections. So registering to vote, being registered, and then the election dates that are coming up. So primary elections are August. Voter registration deadline for the primary election is July 25th. The primary election is August 23rd, and then voter registration deadline is October 11th, and then the general election is November 8th. All of those things are important because we will have 28 congressional seats, and how the chips fall with that will impact the 40 Senate seats, and that will impact the 120 House member seats and where everybody goes. So we've already seen some members move to different districts, decide they're going to run for Congress, decide they're going to run for other things. You have a term limited senator who will be leaving. So a House member has already jumped in that race and been basically the chosen one is there. Some other seats are going to fall. So who's going to run in open seats? All of that is going to kind of take place. Hopefully the maps will be done in time, because we know that we have to have filing done in order for everything to be ready for the election. So statewide elections, the governor, the attorney general, the CFO, the commissioner of agriculture, the US Senate, and the US Congress, everybody's up for re-election this year. So it's a big year, and getting those maps done early is essential to be prepared. So that's the end of the wrap up. If anybody has any questions, we're here to answer them. This is all of our contact information. Those are our cell phone numbers. You are welcome to text us or call us. We are always available to answer questions and are here to help. So I guess, oh, okay. Sandy, I'm going to let you go first.
Thank you, Erin. This was very good, very comprehensive. And thank you for everything that you guys did for us this session. We're very, very grateful. Just a quick question about the home kitchen bill. You know, last year the home-based business bill passed, and to me, it seemed like that pretty much tied our hands on what we could do with home-based businesses. So what's the difference with this kitchen bill, and why would it even be needed? It seems like the home-based business bill from last year probably would allow it.
Jack, could you
Yeah.
answer that? He studied
I'd be
a
happy
lot.
to. This is two national associations, Sandy, that are trying to increase home-based kitchens. One of the associations actually recommends they go through their local government. The other association is the one that was pushing this to try to preempt it. I think they probably could do part of it through the home-based business, but this was trying to structure the regulation of it and move the inspections to the Department of Agriculture rather than Department of Business and Professional Regulations, which does every other restaurant in town. As Fernando knows, DVPR is the guy that people that come in and check hotels, they check restaurants, and they have that capability. Department of Agriculture does not have the capability to inspect restaurants or home-based businesses. So we happen to represent a large farmers market in Pompano Beach, Florida, that does about $20 million a year in wholesale produce. They have a restaurant there. Department of Agriculture is about 100 feet away, and they don't have time to inspect it. So for them to inspect kitchens all over the state was not going to be feasible. And we spoke to the sponsors about that, and we'll be working with both sponsors over the summer on that, that if you're going to do this, you got to do it where it's structured. The other problem was they were trying to pick up the home-based business concept of $250,000. Well, in one case, they were limiting the number of dinners, and the other case, they were saying you could do up to $250,000 a year. I don't know about you, but I can't cook $250,000 worth of meals in my kitchen. I mean, you're going to be ripping out the kitchen and putting a commercial kitchen in, and now you've got the Department of Agriculture assigned to inspect, which they're not going to be inspecting. So those were a couple of the problems that talking with Mike and talking with y'all that we felt was a problem. And Unfortunately, it did die this year, and we'll get a chance to work with the sponsors over the summer.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Fernando, go ahead.
Question with about the LPRs. You're saying the governor's still on the fence about it?
Yes, we've been working with his staff specifically about it. It's an individual freedoms issue for him. He didn't just veto ours, he vetoed all of them, and basically just had an opinion that he doesn't like them. He doesn't feel comfortable with how the data is stored. So we're still working with him on it. I think, honestly, we might be able to move him if we get some more law enforcement to kind of say why these are helpful. But again, it's a delicate balance with the governor's office of pushing the right amount. And we're not the only ones doing it. There are some other cities who want them as well.
Do you
And
think
hopefully,
it would
Fernando,
help?
after the election, he'll settle down a little bit because
Yeah.
Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles has license plate readers. Florida Highway Patrol uses license plate readers on I-75 and on the Turnpike. So it's an election year issue that he's pushing on, and hopefully when we get by this, we can educate him a little bit more that, the state's doing it. Why can't we do it at local government and you help out a little bit?
You think it'll help if we were to send him a letter from the city, like on behalf of the mayor, city manager, and maybe our chief of police, and try to garner some support from the other surrounding chiefs and maybe the sheriff? You think that would help?
Yeah, at the appropriate time, and I'll work with Michael on
Okay.
that to do that next fall. The chief was very, very helpful to us this year, getting me some additional information that we presented to the committee and to the members. And that's how it came out of the House committee, as we will explain to them that this is not red light cameras. We're not taking a picture of the person driving the car and who's the passenger in the car or whatever. And, as Aaron pointed out, and as the chief pointed out, we're doing a digital scan of the license plate. And if it doesn't have a want or warrant, then that's it. It's gone. We're not storing it anyplace. But if it's got a want or warrant, well, then it pops up, and then we obviously might want to have a little chat with the person.
Okay, sounds good. But whenever you need some help, I'm ready to
Thank
go
you.
knock on the governor's door and make sure that we can get these LPRs for our
Thank you.
police department here.
Thank
you,
you,
Jack.
Fernando. That'd be very helpful, and I'll coordinate that with Mike.
Perfect. Yes, Mayor?
I just wanted to say thank you for this great update. I don't remember ever getting a post-session update like this before. So hopefully this is the first of an annual event to come. But also, I have not been as involved in the legislative session as I was this year. So I just want to thank you guys for hosting us in Tallahassee and guiding us through the maze that is the House and Senate office buildings. That was really, really informative. Hopefully we made at least a little bit of an impact. But I think that we'll just, the more of us that go over, every year, we'll just get a little stronger in building those relationships and communicating our message. So thanks for keeping us involved and engaged. And thank you to my colleagues for responding and proactively reaching out to our friends in the House, Senate, or the House and the Senate. Appreciate you guys.
Perfect. No, we appreciate you guys coming up, and we'll definitely be sure to keep everybody in the loop, and I just can't thank you guys enough. We haven't had that before. We used to have the city manager come up and the mayor, but it's nice to have multiple council members come. Yes, Mr. Nichols.
Great job. Sorry I couldn't come up when everyone else did. I was up for two other times. I got to spend some time with Jack. I appreciate all the effort showing us around when I was up there. But great job. I mean, definitely keep an eye on the short-term rental stuff. So it did not come very close this year, right? The year before, it was
Yes.
more of a worry.
Yes.
Okay.
So in years prior, it was. And I did want to let you know that when we walked in, Representative Byrd did ask specifically for you. So if you don't come next year and he's there, I'm definitely going to be in some kind of trouble.
All right.
But yes, I agree. And so in the year prior, vacation rentals came much closer to the end to really, it was much more of an issue. I will tell you that there is a desire by the incoming Senate President. So the Speaker, or President Pasadomo, she'll be the next Senate President. She does have a desire to be done with vacation rentals and to do something about it. She also was one of the main architects behind the legislation that had to do with doing the financial impact. So that is another one that I would expect to see again. These are big issues that she feels she can solve for the future of Florida by just passing these bills. So that often indicates that it maybe is a priority for her.
Well,
Yes.
the previous preemption on the short-term rentals is really the issue.
Yeah.
You know, our hands are pretty much tied as it is. And I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it's not going to make that much of a difference. I mean, it just stinks that they've taken that much of home rule away from us and when our neighboring communities don't have it and it all gets funneled to us is very detrimental to our community.
No,
That's a very, very good point. Unfortunately, the proponents overstepped their bounds, and they had proposed an amendment late at night before the Senate committee meeting that would have permitted the management companies to license 250 short-term rentals and cap your fee to $150. And so the next day at committee meeting, we found that about 9 o'clock at night. The next day at committee meeting, and the sponsor is a very nice guy, but we blew that up that would be like $2.50 for each rental for you to send out to your fire department, your building inspector, and have your clerk. And the Senate bill never moved after that. The Senate sponsor promised to correct that problem, but fortunately, the opposition overstepped their bounds on it, and it helped blow it up for us this year. But as Aaron says, it's a industry with a lot of money, and they're going to keep coming back. But you know, we'll keep coming back too.
Sure. And I mean, I think, you know, the work that we did, I mean, from my understanding and my feeling, it has really reduced the challenges that we've had locally. But I don't know if that's directly attributed to what we've put into what we've implemented, or the fact that the industry as a whole is self-regulating a lot better, because with the scoring of both the people that are renting the properties and the people that the renters themselves, it's, you know, most people now are not going to go rent a place that has no reviews, and most people are not going to rent to somebody that has anything negative on their reviews. So, I mean, hopefully the whole thing continues to improve. I don't want to see half of Jacksonville Beach being, I mean, it could cause some long-term issues if it keeps going the way it does. So, but we appreciate all the effort y'all put into it.
Well, thank you. Your leadership and Mike's leadership and the other council members were very helpful, especially in the House. In the Senate, as I said, it blew up by itself. Fortunately, we were able to help out there to blow it up. But it's an issue that'll come back for a while. And you have these industry issues where they come back 2 or 3 years, they keep fighting it through, and then eventually they realize, hey, they probably ought to work with their local city council and mayor. We've had a few years of preemption craziness, obviously, as you all are aware of, and this will run its course. I mean, the legislature is getting to the point where they realize we can't have these preemptions every year. You know, we've got the league has now started another website on just local government stuff to try to educate more people. We've got 6,000 local government elected officials throughout the state and 160 members of the legislature. So obviously they're going to come back to reality. It's just a pendulum swinging, and it takes time. But your leadership has been tremendous on it, and Mike's leadership and the other members of the mayor and the council. Thank you.
My other question just has to do with leadership selection of the replacement for Aaron Bean. Do y'all feel like that is solidified, or is there any chance that might change? I heard slight rumors. So it's sticking the way it is, and we're.
Yeah, and Aaron, you can get into this too, but you know, the last 8 years, we have gone through a period of top-down leadership in the legislature. We're hopeful that that's going to come to an end this year, because the speaker designate, or the former speaker, not designate, former speaker who created this atmosphere. But especially in the Senate, you've got people dictating who runs and who's going to be the member. And the governor is now getting his nose into doing some of these endorsements also and getting candidates out. And it's just not a small d, it's not a democratic process. It's not,
Right.
the normal small d process of, every one of you ran, you had opposition or you didn't have opposition. Some of you run against each other a couple of times, and that's what democracy is all about. We've got a couple instructors of democracy on this call. That's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be the Senate president designate, dictating who's going to be the candidate. But no, it's probably not going to change. The good news is in your situation is we got a good guy.
Yeah.
Clay Yarborough is probably one of the most decent members of the Florida legislature. So it's not like some of the other areas around the state where they may be or may not be picking candidate. We now have the governor looking at picking a candidate against the Senate president down in Vero Beach. So fortunately, you're not down there. So anything else, Aaron, on that?
No, I don't anticipate it changing. Now, I'll say this. Let's see how the maps go.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be really the only huge shift I would see. And I don't foresee any kind of rift between those things, but there was some discussion prior to the voting of the maps on how budget wasn't done yet and the maps needed to be voted on and who was voting which way. And it came from both sides. So both sections decided to kind of put the pressure on. And so I don't think we're going to see a change, but again, let's wait and see what the maps look like. And then let's see how the vote goes down. And then I can tell you definitively if who's going to be in that race for sure. But
Gotcha.
Sandy,
What kind of percentage do you think could you put on the congressional map? Is the governor going to get his, or is it like 50-50 at this time?
well, I think right now the only option is for the governor to get the map he wants because they're not drawing a map.
Right.
Okay. Well,
And there, from what I've heard from staff is they don't want to go to the courts. So the governor needs to draw what he wants. And we either need to take it or we need to have a real good reason why we're not going to take it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
So-
governor's going to draw the map, but it's going to the U.S. Federal District Court. And
Yeah.
if it's anywhere close to what the governor's last map was, it's probably going to be thrown out. And
Yeah.
the federal court judge will appoint a special master to draw the districts as they did 10 years ago.
Okay. I mean, it seems like it removes some gerrymandering. So,
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what map he brings back. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting. Sandy, you have been so patient. What, do you have another question?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the Senate Bill 620 because that one is something that I thought I would share a little bit of information with the rest of my colleagues because Mayor Hoffman, was on the city council several years ago when the city council passed our retail pet sale ban, and about 80 cities and counties throughout Florida have done the same. And so basically, for those of you who are not familiar with it, we in Neptune Beach and Atlantic Beach all said that we do not want dogs and cats to be sold in pet stores because dogs and cats that are sold in pet stores come from puppy mills that are generally coming from out of state. And so the concern about Senate Bill 620 is that it would prevent other communities from being able to pass the same type of legislation because the pet stores could claim, and we all know that puppies do catch a rather hefty price, and they could potentially claim the 15%, impact to their profits. And so, and that's just one, that I would consider an unintended consequence, that this would impact legislation that the community feels is important legislation. And there are other things that would be similar to this that would be impacted by Senate Bill 620. So I would just like to say it would not impact us because we already have the legislation in place. However, it would impact other communities who may want to do a similar thing. And so I would just urge my colleagues that if you are so inclined, to please email the governor or call the governor and urge the governor to veto Senate Bill 620.
Yes.
Thank you, Sandy.
Sandy, yes.
Those are excellent points. And as you've seen from some of the emails that I've sent you, we put together a coalition of not only some other local governments that did not sign off on this thing, like the League of Cities did the third week of the session, but also the animal rights movement around the state of Florida and the environmental movement around the state of Florida has also been extremely active in opposing this bill. So the governor getting a veto, quantity is important, and you all have been great about that, getting yours out. I encourage you to encourage other city officials and other county officials, and we're still working on that every day. The governor doesn't have the bill yet, as Aaron said. And this is a priority bill of the president of the Senate, but the president of the Senate and the governor are not getting along right now. So that's a good thing. And once we get through this special session, I would assume the governor will get that bill and be able to make a decision, and whatever the president of the Senate has done or not done at that time. But the more quantity of opposition, of emails, we've sent you the address, the phone number, CC and his legislative director, so that it gets down to his level, would be very, very helpful. And both the environmental community, the animal rights community, and the local government community are all working together on this at this time. But thank you for bringing that up again.
Perfect. Well, again, if you have any other questions, if you think of something later on, you're welcome to reach out to us, and then we will continue to report on the maps and the developments there, and then also on how maybe election stuff shakes out. And then before you know it, it'll be November, and we'll be back to reporting on bills and making sure they don't pass bad legislation for local governments. Also be on the lookout. Like Jack said, we appreciate if you would write letters to the governor, CC us so we can see them and we know that they're going to him. And then when the bill is sent to the governor, we will let you know. He has 14 days to act. I would tell you that if he gets the bill, he's acting on it that day or the next. That is the new practice. He will have a press conference, or he will get it in a big batch and sign them all in one fell swoop. But most of them, he's gotten one bill at a time and had a press conference and signed the bill. So just be ready. When it comes out, you'll get an email I'll send the email directly to Mike. Mike will send it to you. And then before you know it, it'll be acted on one way or the other. So just be ready for that. That is something different that this governor does that they haven't done in the past. In addition, I'll let you know when he gets the budget. He has indicated that he has some desire to veto some things. This is the only bill he has line item veto power over. So that means he can go through it with a red pen and say no, yes, no, yes, no, yes. And I don't anticipate there'll be an override unless he vetoes something huge. But yeah, so all of that is still to come. He has until June 31st or till July 1st to act on every bill. So they can just divvy them out nice and slow as he wants, and they work together on that. So just be ready. We'll send out everything as it comes to us. So, but I appreciate you taking the time and letting us be on your agenda. We appreciate all of your hard work. We love working for the city of Jacksonville Beach, and we are happy to come over, because when the council members and the mayor and Mike came over, they were telling us about all the new restaurants, and I was like ready to go. But then you guys still do Zoom, which is also great. So I appreciate it. But yes, if there's anything else.
Are y'all gonna be around for special session?
We will be here. We'll be one of maybe 12 lobbyists on the 4th floor. The last day of session, it was Keena, Jack, and I, and maybe 7 or 8 other lobbyists. It was the weirdest session, weirder than a COVID session. But that's just how things have become, very remote for a lot of lobbyists, but we're still there, and we still are.
Okay. I'm probably gonna be up there for one of those days. I'll let you know.
Perfect. Yeah, just let us know.
That'd be great. Yeah, let us know.
Anytime you come. We'd love to see you. So, but yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Mike. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Manager.
Rest of the evening. Okay, we will move on to item 2, which is CRA quarterly report and update. And I will turn the floor over to Heather Ireland and Taylor Mobbs. Heather, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Mike, and good evening, everyone. You have 3 items, or 3 different documents for this agenda item. The first one is the CRA quarterly report and update, and I will dive into this one in a little bit of detail. This covers activities that has been going on since January, since our last quarterly update. The other document that we've provided to you is the March staff report. Taylor's been putting these together for the CRA. I believe we started, I want to say May or June of last year, and the report keeps getting bigger and bigger because we're doing more things. So wanted to make sure you saw that and the format of what we're providing to the CRA, and it's really covering everything that they're doing, that staff is working on, and a little bit of extra information like the restaurants that are coming to the downtown area, for example. And then the last item in your packet is another CRA update that Taylor put together based on a request that you guys had to have a little bit more information of what the CRA has been doing for the last several years. So we covered 21 and 22. This report kind of goes backwards. We also provided information on what was done in 2020 and 2019. And we went all the way back to 2019, since 2020 was a strange year with COVID and virtual meetings, et cetera. So with that, I'm going to dive into the quarterly report and just cover a couple items that are ongoing. Some you've already heard about. I'm just going to give you the update on those. But I would like to point out that it has officially been a year since we hired a full-time CRA coordinator, and we could not be happier to have Taylor in our department. She just, again, I think I've mentioned this before, hit the ground running, and she's been such a tremendous asset to get projects up and moving and continuing, and just, we've got so much going on. We're just really thrilled to have her. Since about, I want to say, probably starting last May, we've had a regular CRA meeting and a workshop almost every month for the last year. So that's really allowing us to get a lot of things done, a lot of projects off the ground and moving. So I'll start with the downtown district, just kind of cover high level stuff that we're working on. The first thing is an incentives program, and the CRA has settled on a couple different things that staff is working with the Southern Group to develop these programs in detail. One of them is a retail enhancement grant that will provide funding to retail establishments to build out their tenant spaces, and then a facade beautification grant. And we're going to try to tie those 2 different grant programs to some expedited permitting processes that we're still working on exactly how that's going to work. So we hope to have these programs developed a little bit more over the next couple of months and bring those back to the CRA for consideration. But they have had several discussions on each one of these, and we're just working out all the little details and crossing the T's and dotting the I's. The next thing that we're moving on pretty quickly is the Art Advisory Committee. We actually had our first interview today, and we're wrapping those up by the end of the day on Wednesday. So something we're super excited about. The Art Advisory Committee will be between 5 and 7 members. We're still working on those details, that will review requests for or call to artists and work to implement the art master plan for the downtown area. We have had some discussions that this, while it will start with public art, could branch off into private art and even possibly into the South End district, because I realized when we were talking about it today, I live down there and I'm not aware of any sculptures or murals in the South End. So it kind of got us thinking, and we've talked about beautification of different intersections in the South End district. So we will have some more information on the Art Advisory Committee and staff's recommendations at the April CRA meeting. So we're really looking forward to that. Another project in the downtown area is the market analysis for the Latham Plaza parking lot. And we are working with a consultant. We should be kicking off that project in the next week or 2 to start that market analysis that will look at the just the parking lot for Latham Plaza currently, and what type of commercial uses would be supported there in addition to a parking garage. So that will be kicking off very soon.
Go on to the next topic. I think Councilor Nichols had a question on the previous item.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Sure. On the citizen advisory panel to the to the CRA, is that covered under sunshine? And I guess under the sunshine law, and then our advisory panels as a whole covered under sunshine laws?
They're not a governing body, so I don't know that they are, but obviously all of our meetings would be public. And they, again, all of our meetings are always open to the public. And the way that that advisory board would work is they will be making recommendations to the CRA. Obviously, the CRA would make some decisions, and anything that needed to would then roll up to city council.
Okay, because the reason I ask is, and I've had a continuing push to make the council the CRA. I don't want to get rid of the CRA. I want to make the CRA an advisory panel so they have the opportunity to meet more often. They fall outside of the purview of the sunshine law, and it'd make it a lot easier to get those things done so they can bring those suggestions to the council for approval or selection, and it will. So I guess my question is, if can the CRA, like I think this is what they do with the DIA in downtown Jacksonville, be an advisory panel that is not covered necessarily by the stringent requirements of the sunshine law?
We will have Sandy Robinson take a look at that, but I believe they would be covered by sunshine because they are an organization that is sanctioned by the city of Jacksonville Beach. And while not taking formal action, they are still providing guidance and recommendations on behalf of the city council. And I see you already nodding.
So
That
then
is correct.
Okay, because I'm being told very differently from other sources, and even from the city of Jacksonville, that their advisory panels are not covered by sunshine. But I'd appreciate if y'all could look into that. Thank you.
More back to you, Heather.
Thank you. So where was I? So the last couple of things in the downtown district are the CRA would like to move forward to the next steps with the Latham Plaza. I didn't realize until today that what's out there now was done about 20 years ago. And I realized that I've been here that long and I should have known that. But we're ready to move forward with the next steps of taking that concept that Dix Height put together in the downtown master plan and moving it to the next stage. So we'll obviously have more information on that in the coming months on where that's going to go and when the CRA will be discussing that. Same thing with the pier entryway. Again, we're still kind of waiting to see when the pier itself actually reopens, but those plans for the revitalization and enhancement of the pier parking lot are pretty complete. So we'll be moving forward with those as soon as we can as well. And then we did have bids. We will be, receiving bids for the downtown bike rack and hardscape projects in the next couple of weeks. So again, just something else we're really looking forward to moving on. The next projects in the downtown that we'll be focusing on are the wayfinding sign master plan, and then some lighting updates as well. So if there's any more questions on downtown, I can cover those now, or I'll move on to South End. Don't see any hands, so I'll move on to South End. One of the projects that we've been working with Parks on is to have some new sidewalk connections into Sunshine Park that would make access for pedestrians, moms with strollers, bicyclists, et cetera, a little safer. And so we'll be bringing some more specific details back to the CRA with budgeting probably in the next couple of months. Something that you guys will see on your agenda for next Monday's council meeting is the MOU for the sale of the 6 vacant lots in the South End. I won't get into too much detail on that since we'll be discussing it Monday unless you have questions, but we've been kind of hanging on to those, and the CRA is ready to get rid of them and put those back on the tax roll in the form of 6 new single family homes. I think at the last workshop, the CRA discussed a potential future passive park at the property that's at South Beach Parkway and Jacksonville Drive. City owns about 6 or 7 lots that are vacant, overgrown. In the South End plan, this area is identified for a passive park. So we had some really preliminary discussions with the CRA on, what that might look like moving forward. And so we'll be soliciting, along with Parks, we'll be supporting them to solicit some impact or input from council and the community and the neighborhood, hopefully soon. And obviously the last and most important item I want to cover for the South End is Friday's event for the playground. We're so excited about this. I can't even express. Hopefully you guys all got the invitation. Taylor and I may or may not have tested out some of the spinny things. I'm not going to give it too much away, but we are really excited about this. So we are very much looking forward to Friday. And on that note, in the staff report, we've provided some information on some Florida Redevelopment Agency awards for the 2022 cycle that we are going to put in applications for. And one of them is Sunshine Park. So more information on that as we get those award applications in, and fingers crossed, we actually are going to submit several items. That's in your staff report, or in the March staff report, excuse me. Just some other things I want to cover. We're continuing to work. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like not even looking up.
That's fine. What time is the event on Sunday, on Friday?
It's at 10.
Thank you.
Councilor Stokes?
Heather and Taylor, I just wanted to talk about South End CRA real quick. Going back to our March 1st, 2021 meeting, we were talking about the TIF reductions. And we, said that we would delay that 12 months. And we haven't really, at least that to my knowledge, I haven't really seen anything come through. And if I missed something, I apologize, but I wanted to wait for this briefing before I brought it up. And I haven't seen anything in this briefing about the South End TIF funding and what our plans are, because I know myself personally, I'm not in favor of reducing any funding. And I know it was talked about last year, and I just want to see where we are on that. If it's, if we've been able to do a study, a report, something so that, like I said, we talked about delaying it 12 months and it's now April, so it's been 13. But in lieu of this briefing, I didn't want to bring it up before just in case it would be covered, but I don't see anything on it, so wanted to bring it up.
Sure, thank you. And that actually was the next item that I was going to cover. And I apologize, I'm not looking at the screen to see your hands pop up, so forgive me. But we are working with the Southern Group to update both the South End plan and the CIP for the South End. So one of the things that Public Works is in the process of reviewing right now is a huge study for drainage in the South End. From that study, when they finally get through reviewing it, there will be projects that are developed for the South End. We're just not quite there yet. So while our goal is obviously to get those in this cycle of the CIP, they may not make it, just to be like fully transparent with you guys, because it's a huge document. It's, I think Dennis said 250 pages long. So it is a lot of work. Several people at Public Works are going through that document right now so that they can develop those projects for the South End that ultimately will go into the CIP, whether it's this year or next year. So as we update the South End plan, we may have to keep it somewhat generic for South End drainage projects, roadway improvements, things like that, until we can get down to those detailed projects. But it is out there, it just within reach. We just quite haven't gotten there yet. And part of that was the date that they got that study. It was delayed a little bit, so they're behind a little bit in their review due to that being delayed. Last thing I wanted to, sorry, Georgette. Your question?
Yes. So I would then suggest that once again, we do it just on an annual basis instead of actually going and with the agreement with Jacksonville to permanently reduce the TIF, to only do it for 1 year again. So, because it sounds like we definitely will have it soon, but not by the deadline that they're going to need it by, that we need to have it by for the tax purposes. Is that correct?
Correct. And again, there will be projects identified out of that study. We won't have a cost estimate right away. So it is a multi-step process for us to get there, but we will get there.
All right. So then I would just suggest that when we're looking at budgeting, that once again, we have a temporary reduction for 1 year instead of the proposed permanent one that was suggested, I think, 2 years ago now. And we keep kicking down the road, as Corey likes to say. And I'd like to just kick it a little bit further until we get those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last thing I wanted to mention, and this is just something that staff has been working with the city's communications manager on, is weekly posts on social media regarding the CRA. We started with just really a general post. What is the CRA? It stands for Community Redevelopment Agency, and this is what they're responsible for doing. And then since then, we've been trying to cover different projects, things that are ongoing, like the playground, things that are coming up, like the cool new bike racks. Last week, we featured an artist that did a mural that finally was finished, and we were super excited. So we're just really trying to get information out there and make sure that the CRA is recognized for the projects that are happening in both districts. I don't want to go into like the staff report and all the details in there, but I will be happy to answer any questions that anyone has about specific projects or in the background information in the last memo that Taylor provided. So we're both here to answer any questions that anyone has.
Councilor Dumont.
Thank you. This is regarding, it was somewhere in the CRA update that the next 8 walkovers are assigned to 4 Waters and ATM to get designs underway for those next 8. And this couples back with the last item on the agenda for future agenda items. I'm sure that we've all received a lot of emails about people being rather taken aback by how high the walkovers are. And we knew that this was coming. Still to see it, it's still wow. That you know, when you have levels and a landing, and you're still on one side of the dune. So right now, Sandy and Mike are working on whether we can have ramps that aren't ADA accessible. And then for those areas that we have the space to put a ramp that's not ADA accessible, do we as a council want to incur the cost differential between the ramp and the multiple stairs? And so I think that this is something that I'd like to put on a future meeting. Again, that's that last topic item. Once we have more information from Sandy and Mike, and I have some estimates of costs from Dennis, with the caveat that those estimates were before a lot of the inflationary spikes in materials.
Yeah, and I think Dennis is listening on the line. I don't think he's advanced into the actual meeting room. You know, one of the things Dennis has been looking at is, can we take some of these locations where they were historically steps and convert them into ramps, even though they may not be ADA compliant ramps? We've got Sandy checking the legality of that. I know that you're aware when we do a sidewalk project, if you're going to install a sidewalk, you're required to make it ADA compliant. We're not sure if that same type of rationale or ruling would apply to the installation of a boardwalk, but we've got the legal department looking at it. So from that perspective, we'd have 3 tiers of costs associated with boardwalks going forward. Lowest cost would be to replace it with steps, even though it would be at the new higher height. The second would be to come in with a non-ADA compliant ramp system, which will increase the pricing substantially. And then the final is actually ADA compliant ramps, where the standard is even higher because you need to have resting platforms every so many feet of the ramp. So we're currently taking a look to see what we can do. I know that when Dennis and I spoke about this the other day, once we have the findings, depending on the timing of that, it may be rolled out in our budget presentation to show you what the revision in numbers look like based on what we think we can do legally, and what that fiscal impact would be.
Mike, the reason why I brought that up is because it also said that they are going out to get the designs underway. And I think we might want to push that up as soon as possible, because it would help to know whether we can do the ramps in places where we have steps, and even if they're not ADA, before they do the design, so then they don't have to redo the designs at a higher cost. Or we have to wait for the next 8 to get designed in 2023.
Here comes Dennis.
I am here and I am listening. The current start of the design that we have going on are really dealing with surveys and things like that. So we've got a little bit of time before we actually get to the actual design and whether we're going to put ramps or whether we're going to put stairs. So we've got a little bit of time, and we are working with Four Waters and ATM on that project. So we'll be ready to address whatever the answers are as we get a little further in the legal review process.
And you've already identified the access points where there is allowable right of way to put a ramp. Because the one on 13th, we all received that email, and there's just no room for a ramp on that access, where on 30th there would be, because there's just more public land.
Correct. And we're still working through each one of those. Like I said, I inherited the list of how we were going to put them, as whether they were to be designed with ramps or stairs. And so we've kind of followed that same piece. I think overall, I believe only like 15 or 16 are really called out to have stairs on both sides. So, I mean, overall, the majority of our 49 walkovers will be with non-ADA ramps and then 4 ADA crossovers. So, that's about 29 that'll have non-ADA compliant ramps as of the initial design, as of today, if everything were to be done again.
Right. And that includes those walkovers. So I'm going to go back to 13th South. It had a ramp on the west side and a ramp on the east side. Now it has stairs on the west side and a ramp on the other side, but it has the stairs because you couldn't fit a ramp there. So you had to put the stairs. And that's kind of shocking and jarring to people who are used to rolling things up at that access point. So I just like, as a council, to really look at what the cost impact would be and how we could, if we think about what the whole purpose of those walkovers are, it's to make sure people don't walk through the dunes. And once you put stairs there, they will walk on the side if they have any of those bikes or wheel things and strollers and all that stuff. So I'm trying to figure out what is the best way to maintain the dunes and still get people to the sand with as much ease as possible. And in some places, it's just not possible. I understand that.
We are also working on a communication that's going to go out, that's going to talk a little bit more about where our ADA ramps are located to kind of help guide the ADA towards those. It's already there on our website now, and it's pretty easily accessible. But we're also going to try to put out a list that shows where are ramp accessible for use as coolers and strollers and bicycles and things like that, to hopefully try to guide those people to those appropriate walkovers. And then obviously the ones that are stairs would be for the more physically fit, the more better to be active, to be going up and across. That's also probably going to be where there's parking available at some times, because people aren't going to want to cross those stairs, but at least they'll have the notice to know that those exist as that.
Great. Thank you.
Councilor Nichols?
Thanks. So at the crossover 11 South, everybody loves it down there. I believe it was steps on both sides of it, but I do understand Georgette's point with that, especially if they had ramps on both sides. I think that's a great point. The one question I did have is, per ramp, like the one at 11 South, what was the individual cost for that unit? Is Dennis still there? Does he happen to know off the top of his head what each one costs?
I am still here, and I don't remember as of now. I remember the range, and I think to one with the stairs was about 60 to 80, somewhere in that range. The ones with the non-ADA ramps were falling about a 120 to 140, and then they went to 160 plus with the ADA ramp when we did them. And keep in mind, the ADAs, 3 of the 4 were built pre-COVID, so those price ranges now may have even gone up above that. I know we only had one in this round right now that they're building that is ADA, which is on 16th South. I'd have to double check those, and I can do that and send that document to Mike to forward out so that we know what the last 8 were costing out at, at least as far as the bid goes.
Okay, great.
I have it now for your last one. It looks like it was for the round last year, 66 for walkover, 113 for ramp, ADA was 133.
Awesome.
There you go. Thank you, Georgette.
Next question was Bose Coral Reef. Where are we on that? I've got people sleeping out there just about every night. It's really horrible for our part of the downtown. Does anybody have any update on the progress of that property and what we can do to get them moving? I mean,
You want to take that one?
it was at, what is that, 5th Avenue North and 2nd Street, I believe is the corner.
Yeah, I believe it is Fifth. I do know that code enforcement and the police department both have been notified of the problems that have been going on the outside of the property and are keeping an eye on it. I don't have a more specific update than that, but I can get with code enforcement to see kind of what the latest is.
I'm more concerned with when is construction going to start? It's been that way for, we're going on years now. And I thought they only had like 6 months until once they get a permit to start or.
That I don't know what their actual long-term plan is for that property. We've met with the owner a couple of times, but we haven't actually received anything as far as what they're officially going to move forward with. So to be determined what the future use of that property will actually be.
Is there anything we can do to push them in that direction?
I'm not sure. I mean, once we got some incentive programs in place, we may be able to assist them with that, but we're just not quite there yet with those programs. We hope to have those kicked off by the fall.
Okay,
but
because
we
I
have to
heard
go
about a
through a
year
lot of
and a half,
legal
like right
review.
before COVID, they were planning on going to construction. And then they had like a certain, I don't know if it was 6 months or 9 months to start. And then they used COVID as the excuse not to start. But my understanding was that once the COVID from the governor, that mandate was done, that their clock started ticking again. And that should have already reached that time when they have to start construction. I mean, can somebody look into that for me? Thank you. And then the last one is where the car wash was on, I believe, like maybe 12th South, 11th South, 12th South, and 3rd Street. It's going to be, I guess, Dick Mondell's Burgers, and I guess this will be their second location from Gainesville. And I was wondering if anybody had tried those because they look good, and if I might have to make a field trip over there to like try them out. Has anybody had them? All right, I'll go and try them out and let y'all know.
Councilor Dumont?
Thank you. This is for, I guess, Heather. Do you get a sense that any of those developments downtown that started pre-pandemic or mid-pandemic are now all holding off to wait about the height limit? That's kind of the sense that I'm getting. They're holding, they're waiting to see if that area is going to go up, and they're not going to budge until there's an answer.
I mean, I haven't had anyone specifically say that directly to me that they're waiting, but it is possible. Some are underway. We do expect Dolphin Depot to get moving soon. And obviously the one that's catty corner to City Hall is already under construction. They've been making a lot of noise today. And some of the other ones may be waiting, but I don't have that specific information. They haven't reached out to us to tell us that that's what their plan is.
Yeah, I think it's more the ones that are capped right now. They're waiting because they can get, if they want to sell it, they can get more or do more with the property. So I was just wondering if you've had your ear to anything.
No, they could be though.
No other hands. Heather, Taylor, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, it does. I will just end with Corey, if you try the burgers, please let us know how the sauce is, because apparently it's very, very special. And I also have not eaten there, but they have an Impossible Burger. So I'm kind of stoked about that because not everybody has those. And I would just, again, encourage you guys to watch the CRA meetings. They're on YouTube. You can review them at your convenience. And if you ever have any questions about stuff that's going on that staff is doing or things that the CRA is up to, please feel free to give me a call, shoot me an email. You can set up a meeting where Taylor and I are happy to meet with you guys anytime we need. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Taylor. Last item we have on the agenda for tonight is micromobility. Just a reminder that at the last regular council meeting, council took the action to make the moratorium indefinite, pending any action by council. With that, I will turn the floor over to City Attorney Sandy Robinson.
Thank you, Mike. As Mike said, at your last meeting, you decided to continue the moratorium indefinitely. This was already scheduled to be on this briefing, but prior to our last regular meeting, I sent out this draft ordinance primarily to start discussion as to what type of program the council would think would be appropriate for us to implement here in Jax Beach if that was the choice of the majority. The draft that has been generated this week before the meeting is that draft in its entirety. If you had a chance to look at it before our meeting today, there are certain places where I put blanks to sort of garner suggestions as to the direction council was interested or is interested in going. But right now, I would just like to open the floor for comments to see whether or not this conversation is still appropriate in view of council's recent action to continue the moratorium indefinitely. So with that in mind, I will stop and listen. And Jacob, if you can hear me and you can bring up the draft and have it available, I'd appreciate that as well.
In the first hand raised is Councilor Nichols.
Yes, sir.
I'll get back to that in 1 second, but I was downtown either Wednesday or Thursday at the Landing, and I was standing in the grass area in the Landing now, whatever it is now, and a girl that was 15 head planted directly in front of me, like 10 feet from me, and she was with her friends, and I don't know what happened, but I just saw her flying through the air and hit head first and got really banged up. With that said, so I continue to have my challenges with this, with us getting into this entertainment option. If it is a last mile, I understand it, but man, just for entertainment purposes, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Also, I noticed in here that it was listed that no one under the age of 18 shall operate or use shared micro mobility devices without the express documented consent of parents. Good luck enforcing that. I mean, if you have an iPhone, they're going to be able to utilize them, and they pay for everything else that way. Are we going to ticket them? But my main point is, I think we need to stop any progress going forward on this. I don't think we need to waste any more of the city's money and time on this. I think we have a lot more important things to do, and I'd really like to move to just end all of this now. And continue a indefinite moratorium until, but I don't think there's any reason to continue to work on a proposal that I don't foresee us ever approving. Thank you.
Councilor Meza.
I'm torn at the moment because I would like to see a pilot program, but I definitely see Corey Nichols' point. I know if we were to come up with a pilot program and have a geofencing, if you have one or two vendors, one of the questions that I was having was, are we going to have a saturated area of these devices around the sidewalk, designated sidewalks? Are we do we have the infrastructure to allow these micromobility devices to actually work and entertain people? Obviously, downtown, they're all over the city. They're used constantly. People use it to go from one restaurant or, I was at the Justin Bieber concert on Thursday and people were using those. I wasn't. But I feel like those micromobility devices are a lot more feasible downtown. I'm not sure if they will be feasible here. Now, if you have your own personal one, obviously it works. But I'm starting to lean more with Corey Nichols on this one, even though I'm very pro business and I want to see this. I just don't know if it's in the best interest of the city right now. So that's where I'm at.
Councilor Stokes.
Yeah, first off, I'd like to thank Sandy for, at least putting forth her best foot when she met with us. When she first got on, this was something that I at least wanted us to get to this stage. And listening to my fellow council members, I'm going to have to say that we defer this indefinitely until we feel such a time is needed for a last mile device. I don't think that we should use these devices recreationally. I don't like that as being these are recreation devices. I would think that they should be last mile devices. And I think that until we can get to a point to where we can use them across all of Jack's Beach to where Georgette and I on the south end can grab a scooter at a business and go to the north end to visit another business and back home without having to get in our vehicles, can do it in a safe manner where, Sandy and the north end can come to the south end, Corey in the middle can come visit us all. Until we could get to that point, I think that we need to defer it. And I'm the biggest proponent of these, but I'm a proponent of them as a last mile. And I think that with all the geofencing that we're trying to do, it just doesn't work. And I think that we need to, I would love to get one at the Casa Maria property right up here, right down the street, walk over there, grab one, take it to the new beach bowl, and take it home. That would be a dream ideal scenario for a rental unit. With the geofencing that we have, that's not a possibility, and it becomes more of a entertainment avenue if it's limited to the downtown. And I just can't wrap my head around supporting that. I love where we've gotten to this point, and I appreciate everyone's time and patience, and especially Sandy's hard work. But at this point, with all of our feelings on this, I feel like we're just not heading in the right direction, and that we need to push pause and tackle a more important issue. And then when we get a little bit more established and we can feel like that there's a positive way to use them to go around the city, just like people do on bikes and renting bikes to go from one end of the city to the other, I'm on board to get behind it. But I think to Corey's point, we have a lot on our plate. We've spent a lot of time. The city attorney's got a lot on her plate. City manager does. Police department does. Maybe we can defer it for a minute if everybody wants to focus our attention on some other issues.
Councilor Dumont.
Thank you, Chet, for that. I could see this being deferred for like 3, 4, maybe 5 years, not necessarily a minute, until we get more stuff going on downtown and we just kind of get more infill. So I do want to really thank Chet for stepping up and saying, all right, maybe not now, not never, but just not right now. And Sandy, you've done a great job, and just file it on in a file and always have it backed up. For when it does come back up again, we have something that we can work right from and move forward with. Thank you.
Councilor Nichols.
I mean, places will still be able to rent them like they do the bicycles and stuff. They'll just have to be returned to that original point of rental, or we're not going to allow any rental of them in Jacksonville Beach.
The moratorium would be for any type of commercial rental of
Micromobility.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
whether it's for recreational or last mile, it would be off the table. But for individuals, Councilor Stokes, who has his own personal,
Yes.
he can use that anywhere in the city without any problems.
Fantastic. And I mean, I think if Neptune Beach and Atlantic Beach alleviated their moratorium, then I would be more open to doing it, because then you could utilize them over a much larger area.
Councilor Golding?
Yeah, Corey pretty much, he said what I was going to say. I think if our neighboring communities were doing these, I could see that it would be something that would be more feasible. But I agree with everyone else that right now is probably not the time to do it. I also want to thank Sandy for all the work that you've done, because there were a lot of things that you put into this draft that I don't think we had talked about or even thought of. And I think it's all really, really important, important stuff for protecting the city and making sure that that it's a program that is that hopefully would not be a risk for the city or a major liability for the city. So I do want to say I like a lot of what I saw in the draft that you did. So I think, as Ms. Dumont said, we have a good start for something whenever we feel it's the right time to start looking at it.
Councilor Meza?
Yeah, Corey brought up a good point. If Neptune Beach and Atlantic Beach were to alleviate their moratorium, then I could see going forward. Our infrastructure here, for the parking spaces for these micro mobility devices are very limited. Like downtown, some of the sidewalks are very wide. When I go to the downtown library for our board meetings, they're right there, and the trucks there switching them out, fixing them. Yeah, we could defer this down the road.
I think there's a consensus to defer this indefinitely. So we will take that direction and run with it.
Okay, it's off my list of things to do.
That brings us to item D on the agenda. I have no miscellaneous items, so we'll jump to E, committee assignment reports. If any council members want to report out on anything they've been working on. I am seeing no hands raised, so we'll jump right to F, future briefing topics. Councilor Stokes.
So I have one. It might require a little bit of legwork if we want to move forward. But one thing that I've noticed that I think would be good for the city long term, we're redoing all of these beach walkovers to make sure that they get out of the dune height. And in talking with our public works director, the dune being a living object, we don't clear the walkovers from sand. And if you talk to residents, visitors, the boardwalks, and hopefully the new boardwalks will stop this issue. But a lot of them are getting covered with sand from people walking on them. And it's leading to Councilmember Dumont's point earlier of people going around them. And because they can't take, on the ramp, it's got so much sand that they can't take the carts over. I would at least like to see if we could put together a feasibility study of what it would take for us to consistently maintain and upkeep our boardwalks and our beach walkovers. It's probably going to be a cost and something that we'll have to decide if it's worth it. But I would look and see if it would be, one or two people start at the north end and clean all the way to the south end, then go back and do it in continual cycle. I think that especially with the new boardwalks, it might lead to better upkeep and make it to where, I mean, we're spending, what was that number? 80 to 130,000, I think it was, on boardwalks. And, maybe that if we promote upkeep, it will maintain the lifespan of those boardwalks to where we don't have to do it. If it's up to the council to consider it, I would think it would be worthwhile for us. And, but it will require some time and legwork to come up with cost and if it's feasible. But I think it would be worth approaching if everybody else does.
Would council like an item in general on the boardwalk replacement program, of which the sand clearing would be a component of that presentation? I see.
I had my hand raised for the boardwalks, but I was under the impression that we're not supposed to clear the sand because we want the dunes to grow.
Well, we'll come back and have it as a briefing topic.
Okay.
A little bit about what we can do and what we can't do. Dennis is giving the thumbs up from his iPhone.
Excellent. That was my thing. Just want to make sure that the conversation of the walkovers were on. Yes, thank you.
Got it. Councilor Nichols?
I had two issues. First, just on one of our previous briefings, oh my gosh, they're going to forget their names, but with Downtown Jacks that came and talked about the reduction of seating to get an SRX license from 150 down to 50. I just wanted to see where we were on that, if we're moving forward on that.
When planning and development has a draft put together, we'll bring that back to a council briefing. I think the question coming out of that briefing was for them to put together an outline of what a program might look like, and then to bring that back to a future briefing. So we do have that on the schedule. Well, it's not scheduled yet. When they have it ready, we'll bring it back.
Great. And then the other thing that I was thinking about is going along with if we start getting the parking garages, I'd really like to think about removing a lot of the on-street parking. So we would allow for much wider sidewalks. So, these smaller restaurants that we're bringing in would have the opportunity to do cafe style seating and stuff as well. So, I know it's a ways off, but I just want to keep that in mind when if we are bringing the parking garages in, that, it would make it a much more bike ped friendly area. And I just love the idea of having cafe style stuff out here. And I think removing some of that on-street parking would help assist with that.
Director Ireland's on the line and probably still listening. This is something she and I have had a handful of conversations about. Not sure when the appropriate time to do it would be, whether it's during comp planning or during activities with the CRA. But clearly, as we start talking about design elements downtown, that would be a consideration to create more outdoor activities. So is that something that y'all would like some interest in as well, with talking about changing the downtown, I guess you'd call it the downtown right-of-way configuration, to make it both pedestrian as well as outdoor dining friendly?
Yeah, I think that would fall more with the comp plan, because what's involved with that then ends up being outdoor seating, the liquor allowances, square footage, a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, so I'll
you're saying bye to me, and then I look down and I see little Chetty.
No. See a little Chetty.
Oh, and then the only other one is, I know this is probably a ways off, but when we're having events, the potential of closing down First Street for a section of it, and at least reduce it down to a skinny one-way traffic, to make it one way, so we'd have much more bike ped friendly areas in there. I know that's a ways off too, but I'd be interested in seeing what it would look like for just southbound traffic on First Street between, Beach Boulevard and maybe Margaritaville, or maybe a couple blocks after that. because I understand that you do have to keep traffic there because they have to have access to the hotels and stuff on the other side, but I think reducing it down to one lane and narrowing it to really slow traffic and make it not very conducive to cruising would be a positive attribute in our downtown.
Would that link in with the urban trails?
Yeah, I
Because
was
that was
gonna
part of
say,
that
yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, that was something that Jim Harriet talked about, and he showed some examples of some other cities who had done similar things. So, and First Street is one of the areas that they are focusing on for that. So that would definitely tie in with that.
All right, great. Thank you, guys.
Counselor Golding. Oh, that's it.
No, I just raised my hand so I could add that.
Okay. Seeing no other hands, that brings us to the end of our briefing tonight. Thank you all for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you all Friday, 10 o'clock at Sunshine Park Playground for its rededication.
Great. Night,
Have a good
Jenny.
evening.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Night.
Excited for the park. Night.